Imagine you're just standing in a dog park
Hmm?
on a random Sunday afternoon, and this frantic new owner runs up to you.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, pulling this totally chaotic puppy on a leash,
Yeah.
right? And they just look completely overwhelmed by, just the sheer volume of advice on the internet.
Right, the information overlord.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
they look you dead in the eye and say, listen, I have to leave in exactly 5 minutes, cut through all the noise, give you the single most important secret to keeping this dog healthy for the next 15 years. What do you even tell them?
Well, if I only have 5 minutes to, save them from that total paralysis of information overload, my answer really boils down to one fundamental principle.
Which is,
Pay consistent attention. And do not wait for something to look obviously wrong before you act. I mean, honestly, that is the entire secret to an animal's longevity.
just paying attention. It almost sounds too simple, right? Especially when you consider the absolute tidal wave of, you know, blogs and forums and weird dietary trends that owners are hit with every single day.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot.
But that is exactly what we are doing today. So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to just bypass all that noise and deliver what we might call the ultimate lifetime health checklist.
I like that.
Yeah, and we are drawing from a massive season-long exploration of dog health. Now, the source material focuses specifically on the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, but, we are extracting the core insights today because they are completely universal for anyone who shares their life with a dog.
Right, because while the specific genetic vulnerabilities might shift, going from a Great Dane to a Chihuahua to a Cavalier, the actual physiological and behavioral principles of being a good guardian, they just don't change. The
Yeah.
mindset itself is completely universal.
Okay, let's unpack this core dilemma. Because when you say pay consistent attention, I feel like people might interpret that as just, being in the same room as their dog.
Right.
But the sources point out that this journey actually begins long before the dog even sets foot in your house. It starts with this invisible foundation.
Yeah, and that invisible foundation is responsible breeding awareness. So when you bring a puppy into your life, especially a breed like the Cavalier, which has very well documented hereditary considerations, right?
Yeah.
The very first checkpoint of attention is asking if the parents were screened for those conditions. Because ultimately, you are inheriting a genetic history.
And I know a lot of people feel incredibly awkward asking a breeder for medical paperwork. Feel like they're, insulting the breeder or just being overly demanding.
Absolutely, they get nervous.
But to me, this is exactly like asking for the Carfax before you buy a used car.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. You aren't accusing the dealership of lying to you. You just want to know the mechanical history of the engine you were about to rely on.
Yeah.
You want to know if it's been in a wreck.
Yeah.
It isn't being difficult. It is literally just being informed.
Exactly. And once you actually have that history and you bring the dog home, the sources emphasize that the absolute first habit to lock in day one is establishing a relationship with a veterinarian. And not just any vet, but building a true, consistent partnership.
And sticking with them is the key, right? Because a lot of owners, they kind of treat veterinary care like an oil change.
Yes, exactly like an oil
Yeah.
change. They just hop around to whatever clinic has the cheapest vaccine drive that weekend or whoever is closest.
Yeah.
But a veterinarian who knows your dog's history over a span of several years, they are equipped to do something a stranger simply cannot do. They can catch subtle baseline changes.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because when your consistent vet examines your dog, they aren't just comparing your dog to some generic textbook standard.
Right.
They are comparing the dog in front of them to the exact same dog they examined last year and the year before that.
So they're essentially watching a moving picture rather than just looking at a static snapshot.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. They track the long-term trends.
Okay, so we have the foundation, we know the genetic history, and we have a vet tracking the long-term moving picture. But, the vet only sees the dog maybe once or twice a year, if you're lucky.
Right.
The rest of the time, the responsibility is entirely on you. And the sources call this the master lever of a dog's health.
Yes, the master lever.
The one metric you control every single day that mechanically impacts literally everything else in their body. And we are talking about body condition and weight.
Yeah, weight management is the ultimate preventative medicine, hands down. But the crucial takeaway from the material here is the method of observation.
Okay.
Owners must learn to check their dog's body condition with their hands, not just their eyes. You have to physically feel for the ribs. You have to check for a tucked waist.
Because if you have a fluffy dog, your eyes are going straight up lie to you.
Absolutely they will. I mean, by the time a weight gain is visually obvious through a thick coat of spaniel fur, the dog has likely already put on a significant percentage of excess body fat.
Wow, yeah.
So doing a hands-on check maybe once a week, it catches those gradual shifts early.
Now, the sources make it very clear that nutrition and exercise are a paired foundation here. You cannot outwalk a terrible diet, and you can't just, restrict calories on a dog that never gets off the couch.
Right, they have to work together.
But I want to play devil's advocate for a second here. Because the sources are incredibly strict about treats and table scraps, insisting we cannot view them as separate from the real daily feeding.
They are very strict about that.
But come on. I mean, it's a tiny cube of cheese, or like the last bite of a hot dog bun at a barbecue. So what does this all mean? Are a few extra scraps genuinely that destructive?
For a small, highly food-motivated breed like a Cavalier, yes, it is incredibly destructive.
Really?
Because those extras, they add up to systemic damage. We so often think of extra weight as just, a heavy backpack the dog has to carry around, making them a little tired.
Right, that's exactly how I picture it, just extra baggage.
But the physiological reality is far more severe. Fat is active tissue. When a dog puts on excess fat, their body literally has to build miles of new blood vessels just to supply oxygen to that fat.
Wait, miles of new blood vessels just from a little extra weight?
Yes, the process is called angiogenesis. And think about the mechanical strain that puts on the heart.
Oh, wow.
The heart now has to pump significantly harder every single second of the day just to push blood through miles of extra piping.
That is wild to think about.
And furthermore, think about their joints. The cartilage in a dog's knees and hips, it acts like the brake pads on a car. Every extra pound of weight grinds those brake pads down faster.
Right.
And once that cartilage wears away, you are dealing with bone grinding on bone. And that ultimately dictates their entire comfort level in old age.
See, that completely shifts the perspective. It isn't just about looking a little chubby, it is about microscopic mechanical failure. And knowing that extra weight forces the heart to work overtime. Well, that naturally brings us to the specific vulnerabilities of the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Yeah, heart disease. Specifically, mitral valve disease is the most well-known predisposition for this breed. And because of that, heart health requires intense, ongoing awareness from day one. You aren't just waiting until they turn 8 years old to start paying attention.
Right. And the sources mention watching for things like reduced stamina or persistent cough.
Yeah.
But I think this is where that information paralysis sets in for people.
Oh, for sure.
They hear watch for a persistent cough and they suddenly feel like they need to become, a canine cardiologist.
I completely understand that fear, but let's look at the mechanism of why a dog with a heart issue actually coughs. It's really interesting.
Right.
When the heart struggles, it actually enlarges, it gets bigger, and as it physically gets bigger inside the chest cavity, it presses upward against the dog's trachea, their windpipe.
Oh, I see.
And that physical pressure is what triggers the cough.
See, understanding the why makes it so much less abstract.
Ah.
But even knowing that, none of these observations we are making at home are actual diagnoses.
No, not at all.
It reminds me of a neighborhood watch program. Like, if you join the neighborhood watch, your job is not to chase down a suspect, read them their rights, and make an arrest, right?
Right.
You are not playing police officer.
Right.
Your job is simply to notice suspicious activity, like, say, a strange van parked on your street for 3 days and reported to the authorities.
Yeah.
As an owner, you aren't playing doctor. You are just reporting the suspicious activity to the vet.
What's fascinating here is that observation is a developed skill. Your neighborhood watch analogy is perfect because the only way you know a van is strange is if you already know what cars normally park on your street.
Exactly. You know the baseline.
Yes. The goal of an owner isn't to memorize a veterinary textbook of symptoms. The goal is to know your dog's specific, boring, everyday baseline. If you know exactly how much stamina they normally have on their usual Tuesday walk, that a tiny shift, like them suddenly needing to sit down halfway down the block, it stands out to you like a flashing neon sign.
And beyond the heart, we really have to look at the other breed-specific areas, which would be the ears and the eyes.
Yes, the Cavalier is famous for those beautiful, long, heavy ears. But structurally, those heavy flaps create a major vulnerability.
Because they block air, right?
Exactly. They completely block oxygen from reaching the ear canal, and they trap all that body heat.
Creating, essentially, a dark, humid microclimate.
Precisely. It acts as a literal petri dish for yeast and bacteria. Moisture and debris build up way down in the canal, completely hidden from view.
Ugh.
Yeah, and you will never see it unless you physically lift that ear flap, look inside, and actually smell it.
And with their eyes, the observation is less about staring deep into their pupils and more about watching how they interact with their environment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Watching for cloudiness or excessive tearing is part of it, sure. But the behavioral cues are often so much louder.
Like what?
Well, do they suddenly seem hesitant stepping off a curb? Are they bumping into the edge of the coffee table in a living room they've known for years? That tells you their spatial awareness and vision are compromised.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about physical observation, lifting ears, feeling ribs, but a major takeaway I got from the source material is how to actually fit this into a busy life.
Right, because everyone is busy.
Yeah, and the sources essentially reframe standard, boring dog chores as secret diagnostic tools.
I love this reframing. It takes tasks that feel like a massive burden and gives them immense clinical value.
Take grooming. I always viewed brushing a dog as a purely aesthetic chore or just, a desperate attempt to keep hair off my black clothes.
Oh, we've all been there.
But the sources highlight that it does double duty. Yes, it maintains the coat,
Yeah.
but more importantly, it is an informal, hands-on health check. When you are brushing your dog, you are systematically running your hands over their entire body. That is the exact moment you find the strange lump under the skin or discover a tick or notice a specific spot on their hip that makes them wince when you press it. Brushing is actually an investigative mission.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the exact same investigative logic applies to dental care. And this is perhaps the most critical connection in the entire deep dive.
Okay, lay it on us.
People think brushing a dog's teeth a few times a week is just about preventing bad breath, or maybe avoiding a costly dental cleaning at the vet.
But the sources reveal a massive systemic link here.
A profound link. Plaque is not just dirt, it is a bacterial biofilm.
Okay.
When a dog has poor dental hygiene, their gums become inflamed. And that inflammation breaks down the barrier between the mouth and the bloodstream.
Wait.
So bacteria from the mouth enters the bloodstream, circulates through the entire body, and physically attaches itself to the heart valves.
Oh, wow. So if you have a Cavalier, a breed that is already genetically predisposed to weak mitral valves, skipping their dental care is literally injecting bacteria straight toward their greatest vulnerability.
Yes, you are actively compounding their genetic weakness by neglecting their teeth. That is why dental care is a cornerstone of cardiovascular health.
That is a massive realization.
Okay.
Like moving from the physical maintenance to the administrative maintenance.
Yeah.
Because we have to talk about things like vaccinations and parasite prevention.
Yes.
This is another area where I think people just go on autopilot.
They absolutely do. Many owners just treat vaccines and flea or tick prevention as a blind one-size-fits-all subscription.
Like Netflix.
Exactly. They just show up and do whatever the little reminder postcard in the mail tells them to do. But the sources emphasize that this needs to be an ongoing, tailored conversation with your vet.
Because it's an invisible layer of cellular protection and the threats change over time.
Exactly.
Right.
What is appropriate for your dog shifts based on their age, their changing lifestyle, and their specific environment. I mean, a dog that hikes in tick-infested woods every weekend needs a very different parasite strategy than a senior dog that only walks on city pavement.
And to manage all of these shifting strategies, you really need organized medical records. The sources mention an administrative tool called VitalPet, which helps consolidate records, medications, and care schedules.
Yeah.
And considering what we discussed earlier about tracking a long-term moving picture, I can see why organizing the data is crucial.
Because emergencies happen, and usually at 2 in the morning.
Of course, always.
Right. And if you have to rush to an emergency specialist who has never met your dog, handing them a disorganized grocery bag full of paper receipts is just not helpful.
No.
But handing them a clean, organized history, whether that is through an app like VitalPet or just a meticulously kept binder, it allows that specialist to see the trajectory of your dog's weight or the exact progression of a heart murmur over 3 years.
It gives them context.
Yes, it allows them to make a medically accurate decision under pressure. Though we should note, obviously, tools like VitalPet are organizational companions. They never replace the diagnostic guidance of a licensed professional.
Of course, it's just the filing cabinet, not the doctor itself.
Right.
But tracking that history over time forces us to confront an inevitable reality, which is that the dog is going to age, the physical animal will change, which means the way you care for them has to evolve.
Yes. The checklist is not static. The core mindset that attentive observation stays the same, but the actual things you were observing will shift dramatically through the life stages.
Let's talk about that evolution, because in puppyhood, it feels like the focus is just survival, and laying track for the future.
Pretty much. Puppyhood is entirely about building the behavioral and physical foundation. Socialization, positive reinforcement training, and teaching them gradual independence so they don't develop crippling separation anxiety later on.
But then they hit adulthood, and it feels like this is where owners fall into a cruise control trap.
Oh, big time.
The dog is fully grown, they seem healthy, they know the house rules, and so we just stop paying as much attention. We get complacent.
Complacency is the enemy of adulthood. In those middle years, the focus must shift to rigorous consistency. You are holding the line,
Right.
maintaining that steady, healthy weight, ensuring the daily exercise doesn't drop off just because you got busy at work, keeping up with the preventative vet visits even when the dog seems completely fine.
And then they enter the senior years, where the cruise control completely breaks down.
The senior years require incredible nuance. Your focus shifts toward closer observation and thoughtful adjustment. But the key here is doing this without panicking.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, a senior dog is going to slow down. Their hearing might fade. You cannot assume every single change in their pace is a life-threatening emergency. You adjust their routine thoughtfully, recognizing that aging is a natural process, not a disease.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Across all of these life stages, puppyhood, adulthood, senior care, the source material identifies one overarching failure. They call it reactive ownership instead of attentive ownership.
Yes. Reactive ownership is waiting until a problem is so loud, so painful, and so obvious that you literally cannot ignore it anymore.
Right.
Attentive ownership is noticing the quiet, gradual changes weeks or months before the crisis hits.
And that reactive mindset is exactly what destroys your ability to handle an emergency. The sources point out something so simple but so often ignored.
What's that?
You need to know the physical location of your 24-hour emergency clinic and have their contact info saved in your phone long before you ever actually need it.
Absolutely, and this ties our entire discussion together perfectly. Knowing your dog's normal behavior baseline, that daily attentive ownership, is your ultimate shield in a crisis.
Because you aren't guessing.
Exactly. Under the extreme pressure and terror of an unexpected emergency, if you already know exactly what a normal resting breath rate looks like for your dog, you can clearly explain to an emergency vet exactly what is abnormal right now. You cut through the emotional panic with hard data.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
Yeah.
If we are synthesizing this massive season-long deep dive into one actionable checklist for you, the listener, it comes down to informed ownership. Ask the right genetic questions before day one. Maintain their body condition, remembering that excess fat literally builds miles of extra blood vessels that strain the heart.
Right, miles of them.
Check their ribs with your hands, not your eyes. Reframe your grooming and dental care as diagnostic investigations to protect those heart valves. And build a true moving picture partnership with a vet who tracks your dog's timeline.
It is about consistency, applied patiently and deliberately over the entire span of the animal's life.
It is an incredibly powerful framework, but, looking at all of these interconnected pieces, it brings up something else entirely.
What do you mean?
Well, throughout this entire deep dive, the undeniable core theme has been knowing the baseline,
Right.
paying consistent daily attention to the tiny details so you can catch small changes before they compound into absolute disasters.
Yes, that is the very definition of attentive care.
This raises an important question then. If attentively tracking subtle, gradual changes, like, feeling the ribs or checking the gum health, is the absolute best, most scientifically proven way to ensure a long, vibrant life for our dogs, how often do we actually apply that same attentive versus reactive mindset to our own human bodies?
Oh, wow.
Or to the humans we love?
Yeah.
I mean, are we waiting for things to look obviously painfully wrong in our own lives before we take action?
That is a staggering point to leave on. I mean, we will happily drop everything to physically feel a dog's joints every single week to ensure their longevity, but we will completely ignore our own subtle warning signs for years until the pain forces us into an emergency room.
It really puts our own self-care into perspective. Definitely something to mull over while you were taking the dog for a walk today. As always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And just a quick reminder, while we love exploring the mechanisms and breaking down this information, we are just your guides to the material. Any specific health concerns for your dog should always be taken to a licensed professional veterinarian. Catch you next time.